So we were talking about, like, how you actually got involved in politics.
That's an interesting story. I'd been doing improv comedy for almost 20 years, and a lot of the jobs and the networking around the comedy industry, especially in Southern California, was based on your social media profile. How many followers you have, what's your engagement like. Let's look at your profile and see if we can sell that. And so I had started to actively engage in a social media audience around 2012, 2013. And that was, in the middle of Obama's second term. And a lot of the great political commentary was coming from comedians. The Jon Stewarts and the Stephen Colberts and
Trevor Noah. Yeah.
Trevor Noah. Well, Trevor Noah wasn't on this
big
a scene yet. But what I found worked for me was including political commentary into my comedy. I'm a very clean comedian. Like, I don't go blue. I don't talk about anything that you can't joke around with your kids or your mom, right? That my type of comedy is very much family friendly.
Okay.
And so politics is one of those easy family friendly things to talk about because you don't have to swear, and a lot of it is not very controversial stuff. And so I kind of fell into that niche and got a lot of engagement out of it. And so I became much more well known in my circles as the guy to go to for political commentary, understanding the Constitution, understanding the federal government, understanding what's going on with our court systems and all that stuff. And so in 2016, I was actually approached to work on Hillary Clinton's digital team. I had such a good Facebook and Instagram and Twitter engagement profile that they wanted me to come on board and help out her digital campaign. And I thought, wow, what a great opportunity for me to really test out my abilities in real world scenarios rather than just my local comedy scene. And we did really great. We had fun with, jokes and memes, and we were making fun of Donald Trump, and it was a whole thing, and it was really great. We had a wonderful time.
Did you have any reservations about that? Because, you are, more progressive. Like, I feel like, you would have probably been a better fit, working with, Bernie Sanders or somebody.
Well, I was approached by her team after Bernie Sanders had lost the primary. I was a hardcore Bernie voter, and in fact, when I joined the team, it was interesting. About half the folks there were Bernie supporters.
Right.
And so we all realized, oh, well, our guy who we loved was not moving forward. So, okay, now we got to stop the orange buffoon, right? That was the plan. And so I brought my enthusiasm for progressive politics into that organization. And in fact, you can look back, and Slate, I believe, did a really great profile on this. Hillary Clinton was the only candidate for a Democratic nominee for president who actually became more progressive on her platforms after the nomination. Typically what happens is the Republican runs to the right, the Democrat runs to the left, and then whoever makes it past the primary, they move to the center to try to collect those votes. And we credit that change because of us. We were the Bernie voters who went and joined her team and pulled her further left after the primary, which had never been done before. You never see that. But we enjoyed our time. We made good friends. And then after the election, I remember we had all planned, the entire team was like, well, what are you going to do after the election? And all of us were like, well, I'm going to go back to my old, I'm going to go back to acting, and I'm going to get my headshot. I have to, get my agent to sign me over for theatrical. Like, it was a whole plan, right? I had all these. And then the day after the election, I woke up, and I remember it was like, I woke up from like a fever dream, and I jumped out of bed and I grabbed my phone and I typed 3 words. I typed Burbank City Elections. And that week was the nomination period for Burbank City Council.
Wow.
It's almost like it was kismet.
Right.
I did that because I remembered in the back of my head, Bernie Sanders started his career as the mayor of Burlington, Vermont.
Right.
And I'm like, I could run for local office. If that's where he started, I could do that too. And I can help people and protect them against what's coming from the federal government. That was my entire impetus for running, was to help people, because I knew there were bad things coming. And I was right, we were all right, we all knew what kind of president he was going to be. And it was a mess. And so we did the things here locally and pushed for change at the local level to really protect people and safeguard against a terrible federal government. Hey, you. I'm good, how are you? I know everybody who works here. The biggest change I think that happened in my life was the fact that people started to treat me as respectable.
Okay.
So my whole life I was the funny guy, right?
Right.
Making jokes. I never take anything seriously. If you want to have fun, I'm the guy to call. If you want to have a serious conversation, oh no, that's not me. But what I realized was the reason I am good at comedy, the reason why everybody knows me as being funny and hilarious, is because I understand what people are going through. You can't make jokes if you're not relatable. Nobody's gonna laugh at your stuff if they don't share experiences with you. The reason I do clean comedy and family-friendly comedy and political humor is because those are the things that everybody can relate to. And so when I got into office, I just simply talked about my struggle, being broke, paying rent, not getting good wages, not having health care. Like,
I do find you extremely relatable. I you aren't unwilling to share your vulnerabilities, talking about dealing with autism and driving Lyft, what I mean, it makes you extremely relatable. One of the things that I noticed in office and stuff, that you managed to stay very active in the community, pushing reform, but most politicians, you get involved in it was this one incident where it was a drag show in the Santa Clarita Dems that hosted, and they'd advertised that it was 15 and older, you could come to the event, and the libs of TikTok, who basically for people that don't know, they take anything that happens and make it out of context and make a big deal out of it, and basically we're saying that you were encouraging kids to go to a drag show where you were spanked by a drag queen. Can you talk about that incident?
oh yeah, sure, absolutely. So just going back a bit, my autism diagnosis, the fact that I drive for Uber and Lyft, and the fact that I never graduated college, or that I had to gone through a bankruptcy, all of that stuff is real world experience, things that people have lived through. And so when I attended a fundraiser for the Santa Clarita Valley Democrats for a drag queen bingo show, I'm a man of the people. You're gonna invite a bunch of people to bingo, hosted by a drag queen? I'm gonna go. Let's go. That sounds fun. I've been to drag queen bingo before. It's a blast. And so, I'm the kind of politician that shows up to that stuff, because you're right. I stay connected to the community. I stay grounded. I don't just sit in my office all day long. I go to the community events. I go where people ask me to go and show up where I need to show up. And yeah, we got targeted by this Libs of TikTok, who is an absolute nightmare of an account. If you don't know who Chaya Raichik is, She actually is appointed to a government body in Ohio, and she is very anti-LGBTQ. She uses her social media account to target people who are pro-equality, who are pro-democracy, and is just, very rabid in her discourse and allows for that conversation to turn violent. Here at Burbank City Council, after she found the video of me participating in Drag Queen Bingo, it went viral, and we ended up getting death threats. We ended up getting a couple bomb threats. It was very scary for all of the people who work in this building that had zero participation in that event. Simply because I showed up to support a community event, suddenly now these people who are working 9-to-5 jobs, who have no decision-making power, they're not the politicians, they're now getting treated with horrendous emails and vile language. I mean, people would call, they would wait for someone to pick up the phone, and they would go off on them and just spew the most disgusting, hate-filled speech you can imagine. And it was very disturbing. And that was going on for about 2, almost 3 weeks. Every single day, all day long.
And I mean, that's one of the things you see with the power of social media. I've been a victim of that myself. I actually had a video with Bernie Sanders where I went to a Bernie Sanders campaign event when he was the Democratic nominee in the last election. And he had told a baby to be quiet. And the Republicans had taken that clip, and, it ended up going viral on Fox News and CNN. But, what they failed to emphasize was what he was talking about before that, and he was talking about the need for affordable health care for all Americans, which was a very powerful point. I feel by putting out these messages that kind of deflect from the real issues.
Of course, that's their whole point. They want you to be taken in with the hate and the anger and the violence rather than the actual issue, which is, trans teens are being targeted and beaten in schools because of how they identify, and yet that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, politicians who support the LGBTQ community and how they're the ones really doing the disservice, and it's just not true. I went to a vigil last week for Nick Benedict, who was a teenager, a non-binary teenager who was beaten to death in the bathroom of an Oklahoma public school, and it was, preventable. They could have called the paramedics, and they didn't. It's horrifying, and so it's issues like that we need to really focus on and not get bogged down in all the other things in politics, like who's wearing the tan suit, and who's supporting who, and who's besties with who, and who's dating who. It's like, God, it's like the gossip column, and people are dying, and yet we want to talk about what someone wore to some event.
Is it though, difficult, not to get caught up in the celebrity aspect of politicians, because you do see some politicians, I think, using their platform more so for celebrity, as opposed to
Oh, of course. And I think that's what makes me different, because I've worked for decades in the film and television industry. Many of my friends are celebrities. I've done the work of being in the room and doing the job that celebrities do, film and television, movie stars and pop stars and all of that. And I understand the difference between using your celebrity for good and using it for bad.
Right.
You have people who are coming up through the ranks in politics who only get the job because they are wildly corrupt, right? They take all of the corporate money and then they benefit the corporations. And then at a certain point, they hit a level where, now they're known in the community and they're pseudo-famous. And it starts to get to their head. And now they suddenly think, I'm the best person for the job because everybody loves me and everybody knows me. I'm a celebrity. And I'm like, hold up. You still put your pants on one leg at a time like everybody else. If you'd actually worked with celebrities, if you've been in the room, if you've actually done the job, you'd understand that celebrities who act that way, they don't get work very often.
Right.
You need to stay grounded because this kind of thing goes to your head. And I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in real time.
Yeah.
So I believe that because of my work experience, because of the things that I've done in my career and the fact that I've interacted in this type of highly public and celebrity environment, especially here in Burbank, media capital of the world, I'm almost inoculated against that.
I understand.
I'm immune to that celebrityism because I've seen it. I've seen it good and bad. So I don't even concern myself with that anymore. And I think that's what makes me very different than most politicians.
Right. I see you doing the work, and like, you know, you're running for the county supervisor position, and this is a position and stuff that's very important. They're in charge of billions of dollars. You know, I think, like, you know, we have to emphasize that because I don't think people realize how much of an ability, like, you know, having someone as progressive as you to be able to make change. Why are you the best person for the job of county supervisor?
Well, I'll tell you right now, county supervisor is one of the most unsung jobs in politics, right? It's not Congress. You don't need to be a congressperson. Even like state senate and state assembly has some more prestige to it. This is like the hardest job with the least amount of public accolades.
Right.
And so if I wanted to be a celebrity, this is not the position I would have run for. There's a lot of work.
100%.
And I'm prepared for that work. And the reason I'm running for this job is because we need somebody who wants to do that work. Not somebody who's been in office for decades, who's okay with the status quo. Because let's face it, the status quo benefits the person who is the incumbent. If you don't change anything, you'll keep your job, right?
Right.
And so for me, I need to change things. We need to change things. Homelessness is out of control in LA County. Affordable housing is non-existent. The fact that your utility rates keep going up, the fact that there aren't enough new jobs being created in this area, it's a sad state of affairs. There aren't even good bus service. You took the bus here, it's not even easy to get around.
100%. There's a lot of things that could be better, and I see like mainstream media kind of painting the incumbent because, you know, she doesn't rock the boat. You know, like I don't know if like people believe in the actual ability of things to get better, or like, you know, for fresh ideas to come in, you know, that could actually change. But I see a lot of things that could be better, especially with the homeless situation.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's like, you know, like a big, you know, reforms that you want to do, like, you know, as far as like also with policing and the sheriff's department and going back to like community policing. Could you talk about like, you know, some of the changes that you would make as county supervisor?
Absolutely. One of the glaring examples of bias that I saw in this race was the LA Times endorsing the Republican incumbent, saying, hey, this Republican, yes, we get it. She's a Republican, but you know, she knows the system. She's been around for a long time. If you really want someone to do the work, she's the one to do it. And my first question is, well, how come she's been in office 2 terms and hasn't done the work? Like, that's the easiest question. It's like, why has there been nothing done? What would a 3rd term give her that 2 terms haven't already given her? And yet, here we are, homelessness, affordable housing, the policing is out of control. The
100%.
LA Sheriff's Department has gangs. They are one of the worst police departments in the country. It's...
And as a minority, I've experienced that firsthand. You know, I remember, like, you know, being African American, I can't ride around my friends near the airport without being illegally stopped by the police, where there's no reason for me to get pulled over, and they're searching our car for guns that we don't have, drugs that we don't have, and then, like, you know, we're told like to go about and have a nice day.
Yeah.
You know,
when I got into office here in Burbank, we did big changes. We overhauled the police department. We reduced their budget. We put in a lot of implemented policy changes. We really changed the way that we address protesting and marches. People like to march. People like the First Amendment protests. We used to have the PD show up in, you know, riot gear and zip ties, and we don't do that anymore.
Okay.
When I got into office, I'm like, no, we're done with that. So there's been a lot of really great changes. I am easily one of the most critical politicians when it comes to police, and I have very little to be critical about with the Burbank Police Department. You can ask anybody, and they are one of the most highly regarded, highly respected police departments in the country. And so if I'm coming from that background and you want me to tackle the sheriff's department, you know I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty, because they need a lot of change. And that's really why I'm the person who is going to do the best for this job. Because it's not just policing, it's not just transit. We're talking about water, we're
Right.
talking about solar and wind.
Yeah.
We're talking about animal rights and the animal shelters in the county that euthanize 14% of every single four-legged creature that comes through the door. I mean, that's ridiculous. Also, the protections in the environment for wildlife. And all of these issues are huge issues that only the county can deal with. And yet, like I said, most people have no idea what a county supervisor does, or even who their county supervisor is. It is the most unsung position in state politics, and you know, I want to do the job because I want to do the work.
Most definitely. You didn't get the LA Times support, but you definitely have mine, Konstantine Anthony. I really appreciate you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Welcome.